Greetings everyone. My name is Anthony Deree. I'm the Vice President of International Business at the International Business European Affairs Society. And it is my honor to introduce our next guest speaker, Mr. Margaritis Schinas, Director of the European Commission at the Directorate for Economic and Financial Affairs. Mr. Schinas has been working at the European Commission since 1990 and held various senior posts, including the head of cabinet for the first secret commissioner, Marcos Kyprianou, and served as the deputy director of the Bureau of European Policy Advisors of Commission President José Manuel Barroso. Mr. Schinas also served as a member of the European Parliament from 2007 to 2009. Well, Mr. Schinas is a graduate of Public Administration at London School of Economics and at the College of Europe. In April 2013, a year ago, he was appointed Director at the Commission's DG for Economic and Financial Affairs. And the title of Mr. Schinas' presentation is The Future of the European Integration and the Role of Greece Amidst a Rapidly Changing Global Environment. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Schinas to the stage.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I think it's a great honor to have an EU official and a very European subject to close your business week proceedings. I am well aware that I'm the last speaker, and I'm sure that you know the joke about the last speaker. You don't say that the last speaker should always come with a presentation that looks like a lady's skirt. Should be long enough to cover the essential, but short enough to attract interest. So I promise to stick to the pledge of the last speaker. So I won't bother you long. I really hope that we'll have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of this short presentation. You asked me to talk about the future of the EU and the role of Greece in this new architecture that is gradually emerging in Europe as a result of the financial crisis. I think that when discussing this subject, the elephant in the room is the financial crisis, which started back in 2007, 2008, it's ongoing, and it's shaping, due to its intensity and to the time span that occupies, it's shaping European politics, but it's also shaping European society and economy much more profoundly than some of us thought at the beginning. So let me first briefly take you to where we're coming from, briefly discuss what happened, then again check on what is happening now, and finally try to conclude on what is likely to happen. So these are the three issues. Okay, so these are the three things that I'd like to discuss with you. Let's start with what happened. Contrary to what many people believe, this financial crisis was not a European crisis. It was not Europe that was the root cause of the crisis. It was not our fault. What happened was the result of two things, and both of these things, with all due respect to the American flag next to me, happened in the US. The first one was an excess party of liquidity, an unprecedented wave of liquidity injected from the financial sector. A US bank would lend you $32 for a real dollar at the time. The European bank would only lend you $8 for a real dollar. So it was a party. It was a huge party of liquidity. And the second thing that happened was a complete lack of supervision. No one ever bothered to control, supervise, check the way the financial sector was developing in the US. So the root causes were not European. But when the thermonuclear explosion happened in 2008 with Lehman Brothers, then the shock of the explosion reached Europe and hit Europe particularly hard. And the reasons for that were purely European. So if the root causes were American, the factors that made Europe pay a disproportionate price were European. And there were again two. First was that Europe was under the illusion since 2001 that was operating in economic and monetary union. It was wrong, it was false. There was no EMU, there was only an MU. There was a monetary union, there was a central bank and a common currency. There was no single economic policy. There was a collective leap of faith. We thought that it would work like that. Well, it didn't. It worked for good years, but EMU, as designed in Maastricht, was not something that was meant to help Europe overcome the crisis. So that was the first European problem. And there was a second, equally simple, that in Europe, everybody broke the rules. All the members of the Eurozone had committed to something that we called at the time Growth and Stability Pact, where the rules of belonging to a single currency, a certain discipline, a certain way of following certain numerical targets, everybody violated the rules. Interestingly enough, some of the violators are the ones who are now preaching others not to violate the rules. But at the time, everybody did. So that's where we're coming from. That's how Europe is being shaped nowadays, largely because of two American root causes, but also equally due to two European accelerators. So what has been happening since then? Well, since 2008, 2009, the European Union has engaged in two very difficult, complicated, but absolutely necessary tasks. First, to act as a firefighter, to put out the fire at the periphery of the Eurozone, there where the crisis hit. And then, at the same time, as an architect, to try to, through construction work, design a new, genuine economic monetary union that would fill in all the gaps that the original construction left unattended. So now, in real life, you know that normally firefighters finish their job, they go away, and then the architects come in. Not in our case. Since 2009, firefighters and architects work together at the same moment, at the same site. And this often gives the impression of Europe doing things in a way which is clumsy, awkward, confusing, boring, gray. But you know something? It worked. At the end of the day, it worked. The Eurozone stayed intact. Greece still is trading in euros and not in drachmas. No one was kicked out of the ship. We are gradually bringing in all these, and I'll come back to that, the new elements of a genuine EMU. So this double track work of firefighting and construction work is happening now as we speak. And if you're looking for a typical example of a country that would combine both strands of work, this is this beautiful country in which we are. This is where both architects and firefighters are mainly busy nowadays. And this gives me a greatly like the opportunity to discuss briefly the situation in Greece. Greece was the weakest link of the Eurozone. back in 2009, but not the only one. There were 4. And these 4 weak links we can cluster into pairs. First, it was Portugal and Greece together, and Ireland and Cyprus separate but together. Why 2 pairs? Because the family of problems that each of these pairs faced was different. Greece and Portugal were 2 economies with a bloated state, with inefficient economy, with low competitiveness, with no genuine productive model, where basically the dominant model was to borrow your way into consumption. This made life very pleasant in Greece and Portugal for 10 years. It was one of the best places to be. But you know, it's all parties that are done on borrowed money, a hangover moment comes, and this came in 2009. Ireland and Cyprus were different cases. These were 2 countries that allowed the financial sector, banks, to borrow 8 or 9 times more than the states themselves. Take a moment to think. 2 member states of the Eurozone that allowed their banks to become 8 times the state. Is there any safer avenue for disaster? No. And it came. Why did this happen? Because again, in these 2 countries, there was no effective supervisor. There was no someone who could blow the whistle. There was no macroprudential control. So banks basically operated the way they did. So when we had to address the crisis at the periphery of the Eurozone, the methods were different according to the 2 authorities I just mentioned. But Greece was, and I'm coming to discuss Greece. Greece was, and in a way still is, a case in itself. Greece needed the colossal amount of bailout program of 245 billion euros. I repeat the figure, 245. Wherever the IMF had to move, the worst cases were Argentina and Russia. The order of bailout was something like 80 or 90. 10 million small Greece managed to meet 245. I'm raising this figure because of public debate in Greece there is a tendency to overlook the starting point, to forget where we're coming from. But the starting point matters. And it matters more than the consequences that we're now trying to address. So when this Greek program started, it became very evident that the future of the Eurozone would be lost or won in this country. And now, less than 5 years later, we can reasonably say, and I think with more reason since yesterday than before, that Greece is now moving steadily from the abyss to recovery. There is a tremendous amount of fiscal consolidation, fiscal adjustment that happened. There is a profound program of structural change and reform that is happening across the country. Fiscal adjustment in itself will not help unless we have a meaningful program of structural reform and other reforms like civil service reform, product market reform, that would enable the country to stand back in its feet. Not all our problems have been addressed, but most of them have. We still have some work to do on specific areas, and that will be done. But I'm mentioning Greece as a typical example of what I was telling you earlier, of a test case on whether the European paradigm can serve also in times of crisis, not only in times of prosperity. And this country offers a good example that this can be the case. So that was what has been happening part of this presentation, and I'm only left with the third and final part, which is what is likely to happen, how the EU, the Eurozone, and Greece are likely to develop in the years to come. At the European level, I think we need, now that the worst is behind us, I think we need, and urgently, 3 major breakthroughs. Piecemeal engineering will not help. We need breakthroughs. And these 3 breakthroughs are the so-called 3 unions. The fiscal union, the banking union, and the political union. The fiscal union is what I was referring to earlier, the missing E letter of the EMU abbreviation. We need to do economic policy together in Europe. A single currency and a central bank will not suffice. We need a common federal fiscal approach to the way European economic policy is developed. We're having it. We're having now a new treaty, the fiscal compact, we're having legislation, the 6-pack, 2-pack. There is a whole range of instruments that would guide us through the fiscal union. Then we need a banking union, because the cost of not having one, as I explained, I hope, was one of the main determinants of the crisis. Not having a banking union is mainly not having anyone able to supervise and police the way the financial sector shapes the real economy. We need to have a common European bank supervisor. We have it. Since 3 months ago, the European Central Bank will play this role. And we also need a single resolution mechanism, a single European instrument that would be able to intervene where the supervisor asks a bank to merge, disinvest, or even close. And it's a great day. We are very timely having this conference on the day that the Greek presidency, 3 hours ago in Brussels, managed to announce a deal on the single resolution mechanism, which is the big day, the big news of the day for those of you who are real Euro freaks. I don't know if you are, but this is considered a big day for the Euro, being able to strike an agreement on SRM. And finally, we need political union, quite simply because without political union, no fiscal union and no banking union will be sustainable. We need to have people, normal people, being able to attribute praise or blame on what is happening in Europe. We don't need people who consider that Europe is some sort of science. I often hear people say, well, Schinas is a specialist in Europe, as if I were a nuclear physicist. It's not a science, it's us. It's the way, it's what surrounds us. It's the fact that the European flag is all over around us. It's that the European realities shape society in times of crisis much more profoundly than the founding fathers would have expected 50 or 60 years ago. And finally, and that would be the last part of my presentation, and probably a more Hellenic, if you like, view of the future. Many times there were doubts about whether Greece is a fundamental, integral part of all this. Part of our miseries and our problems were due to the fact that, Greece was not quite a European state. I don't agree with that. And I'm very positive about Greece in Europe. And I'm very positive because there are 2 specific signs of hope that are very telling and cannot be interpreted otherwise. The first is the tremendous amount of patience, resilience, and tolerance that the Greek society assumed in the very difficult 4 years of this unprecedented fiscal adjustment that happened. It is a huge, if need be, evidence that society knows better. And Greeks can be angered, can be frustrated, can be aggressive, but at the end of the day, they assumed that this adjustment was somehow inevitable. And that's a good sign for the future. And the second, and even more telling sign, is that when the Eurobarometer asks the Greeks whether they would be willing to stay within the euro at all costs, that is how the question is put. Are you willing to stay in the euro at all costs? The answers at the start of the crisis, 2010, was 50% yes, 50% no. So 1 in 2 Greeks were determined to leave. 4 years later, after everything that happened, after all the austerity, the sacrifice, the adjustment, December 2013, Eurobarometer asked the same question, and the result is 67% yes. So this means that Eurozone membership for the average Greek, as at least shown by the Eurobarometer, is something that goes beyond economics. It's something that has to do with geopolitics, with the way that the Greeks perceive themselves in a very unstable and uncertain, increasingly globalized world. And both these things are very positive and very encouraging for the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have any questions, please?
Good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. It's an honor having here Mr. Schinas. I have to confess, if you don't care if I tell them this, that we are all friends for more than 20 years, God Almighty. Now, I would like to make the following question. Do you really believe that we are now on a road towards stability? I'm asking you because I know that you have this global understanding and also the political, critical approach, understanding how societies really react. Societies react when they have expectations, and we do have an expectation that we're going to do better. But is it really possible with these regional imbalances which we have in Europe and different kinds of demands and how demands shape development in every economy? I don't want to make it very difficult. With the loss of our power to purchase, do you think that it is easy for this country to develop fast during the next 5 years? In order to cut down unemployment, Margaritis, we need close to 30,000 jobs annually. How are we going to do this? Please help us with this, because this is a big question. And politics can change every night.
No, this is,
Thank you.
as they say in California, this is the mega question. Indeed, this is the issue. And my answer to this will be yes. The complete answer would be yes under certain circumstances. First, we need to have some macro elements falling into place. For example, I don't want to become very technical now, but I was discussing fiscal union. A fundamental part of the fiscal union is to coordinate economic policy to correct asymmetries between the North and the South. So if you have excessive surpluses at the North and structural deficits at the South, up to now, there was nothing you can do. Without the fiscal union, you can simply pray that these are corrected and spray some structural funds money in the periphery with the hope that the periphery economy would boost and catch up. That won't do anymore. You still need the structural funds, but you need through fiscal union to be able to correct the financial and fiscal asymmetries at its root. And the root is when you budget. So the first condition is that the genuine EMU that I was referring to addresses these issues of structural asymmetry within a meaningful fiscal union. Now, there are things that this country should do by themselves without Brussels or the Troika or the IMF asking them to do. And this is something that has started, it's underway, but it's not completed. You spoke about 30,000 jobs that we need. You know that according to the OECD, only administrative burden in Greece, if could be abolished or significantly reduced, would create 80,000 jobs in 2 years in this country. So with no single additional investment. We also have the investment. We have 40 billion euros on the structural funds for the next 7 years. We still have private investment that is now finding Greece more attractive to invest. There will be many positive things happening in the weeks and months to come. But it's our job here, it's the job of the Greeks to address the structural dysfunctionalities in key markets. Administrative burden, a leaner state, a better business environment, tax ethics, a profound, very aggressive war, constant war against corruption and fraud in the public sector, a banking sector that provides help to the ones that need it and not to the establishment friends, be it parties or cousins. So there's a lot to be done, but all this is doable. Provided, of course, that we stay, that Greece stays in this reform path. And the second condition, if you ask me, more political one, is that there is reform, commitment, and ownership. This country needs reform ownership. Something that we do to make our lives easier, to change things for the better, but because we need it, because we want it to happen, not because it's being dictated to us. So that's the best answer I could come up with.
Thank you, Mr. Schinas, for a very spirited presentation. I just want to point out a small detail here. How do you account for the fact that 99% of the top economists in the world, irrespective whether they are liberal or whether they are conservatives as well, 90% of the well-known Nobel winners have thought that the euro is a bad idea?
Full due respect to Nobel Prize winners, I don't share this thought. And I have been taking particular enjoyment to see how many of these Euro doomsayers and prophets of doom have seen all their predictions reversed. I can still show you, if you come to my office, the famous Rubini prophecies about the end of the Euro already in 2011. I had organized a dinner for President Barroso with the 6 chief economists of the biggest financial institutions in Europe, and 5 out of 6 told him that Greece will be ejected from the Euro, and they were ready to bet money on it. So I don't mind that Euro, a currency union, which is unprecedented, this is the only currency union that happens not as a result of war, but as a result of the free will of sovereign governments. I don't mind that there is academic interest around the currency union. I don't mind at all. But I do mind where there is this prophecy, this constant name and blame approach to the European economy. And I can still offer another proof that these people were rather wrong, is that if, I don't know if some of you follow the financial services, hedge funds, investments, it is very simple, that everybody who bet money against the euro lost huge amount of money, and everybody who bet money on the cohesion of the eurozone and Greece staying in the eurozone made a lot of money. So this is telling us something. It's not the end of the story, I agree. We're not out of the woods yet, I agree. But all the early signs of what is happening rather vindicate the positive approach to the currency union. We'll see.
Hello. My question deviates slightly from the topic, but it's a hot topic at the moment. With regards to the Ukraine crisis, could you please elaborate on how sanctions against Russia will affect European countries or specific countries?
Well, I don't claim to be very knowledgeable on world affairs, but I will tell you this. Europe nowadays came to symbolize what we call soft power. Europe is the only part of the world where we have a combination of elements that are very difficult to find elsewhere. It's the only place in the world where, of course, we have democracy, respect for human rights, respect of minority, the role of women, the family, the workplace, no capital punishment, perfect democracies, open press. This is given, or is considered given in Europe, but I can tell you it's not in other parts of the world. At the peak of the Egyptian crisis, there was a girl with a scarf in Tahrir Square screaming out to a CNN camera saying, all this is about freedom. We want to live free. We want to live as they live in Europe, she said. And the former Brazilian President Lula, when he left office, in a memorable speech in the UN, said that Europe is an island of reason in a world of loonies. In Ukraine, you had people dying. That was the first for Europe. The people who were, the 80, 90 people dead last month in Europe, in Ukraine, were bearing EU flags. So this shows that Europe came to symbolize the soft power element, the democratic ideal, if you like, for people who are not having it and they aspire to it. Now starts the bad part. That was the rosy part of the answer. The ugly part of the answer is that Europe hasn't yet worked out how to reply to these aspirations. We don't have an army, we don't have air carriers, we don't have fire jets, there are no European armies. So we haven't yet found how to use soft power to sort out the Ukrainian mess, or the Arab Spring mess, or Libya, but we're working at it. Sanctions is one of the very few tangible elements that we have, because this is a pan-European instrument. And another one is trade, which is also a common policy. So give us some time. Let's see how it works with the combination of sanctions and trade. And we'll probably need to assess the European response to the Ukrainian crisis a bit later. It's still very early.
One more last question, please.
Okay, I'm Dr. Phyllis. I'm teaching in the International European Affairs Department.
Thank you for your very illuminating presentation. I would like to ask you one thing, since you said that the prerequisite for everything, it has to do with the political union of the European Union. We are having the upcoming elections, okay? And we are living within an environment which, it's not only in Greece, it is very critical about the project, the European Union project. So, how do you think, of course, I'm not just asking for your experience and your estimation, that we are going to manage the following year to proceed with the political union with the European Parliament full of Euroscepticists or anti-Europeans, because I would make a distinction between Euroscepticism and anti-Europeanism, according to my opinion. Of course, in the English language it's the same, but I think that it's not exactly the same. And the second thing that I would like to ask you is that when we mean political union, do we mean a German Europe, or we mean a Germany which has been integrated within, let's say, a group of nations within the European Union? Thank you very much.
This is also a very good question. Let me start with the European elections and the possibility that in the new European Parliament you have many Eurosceptics, Euro-radicals, anti-EU parties. I would never vote for any of these parties, but I don't mind at all seeing them represented in the European Parliament, because I think the political union needs debate. And you cannot have meaningful debate on Europe amongst preaching to the converted. You need to inject into the public debate on Europe that part of the debate. And that was missing up to now. So probably this is a heretic view, but I don't mind at all debating Europe with these people, because we're confident. I'm confident that that will, first of all, that we'll have the right answers, but I'm also confident that that will inject more legitimacy into Europe. It's good to have them within the system rather out of the tent throwing stones to us. Now, you're also right when you say, what is a political union? It is not very clear. I can offer you my personal view, because this is something that will be discussed in the years to come. The jury is still out. But I think the political union should be the result of a series of concrete initiatives that would provide the European voter, the average European voter, I would say, with a direct stake in shaping European decision-making. This is not happening now. It's not happening. We don't have a stake. The only stake we have is when we elect our MEP. But this is not a stake in itself. We need to create a stake. We need to be able to attribute through direct commitment, engagement in Europe, blame or praise. The first start is happening now, in May. As you probably know, all the European political parties have appointed a lead candidate who will be the candidate for the presidency of the European Commission. So if you vote for PASOK in Greece, Partido Popular in Spain, and SPD in Germany, with your vote, not only you elect your MEP, but you also indicate your preference to Martin Schulz to become the next president of the European Commission. This is the frog step on European politics. There is, of course, and that's the other part of your question, the danger that through direct political union, the bigger players would have a bigger say. I agree. But should it in a way be also this part of democracy? I mean, shouldn't we give more say to those citizens that are 80 million compared to the 400,000 Luxembourgers, for example? The answer is yes, but we have to give them some weighted influence, but we should also make sure that everybody's voice can be hooked into the democratic system that we're planning. This is happening in the Council of Ministers. We have weighted vote. It's happening in the Parliament. It's happening in the Commission. And I think that we can address these issues definitely without any problem. What matters here is to decide on the principle of political will, to inject political, democratic legitimacy. This is a must. Okay.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you all. We're going to take a very short break.